Hi, everyone, and welcome this evening. So, Joe Levine here. Joey should be joining us in just a couple of minutes. I think he's having some power issues at his house. So, I am alone just for a couple of minutes, make sure everything's up and running on the computer. It looks like we are good. First off, I want to say, as always, thank you for joining us, or me right now. Joey should be here in a few minutes. I know everyone has a busy schedule, especially this time of year. Everyone's very busy, so it means the world to us that people will join us on their, I was going to say Tuesday, but Thursday evenings. Our plan tonight is, well, fortunately, I was set to go first. So I will be going first tonight because, well, that was the plan and Joey's not here. And what we really want to talk about tonight is just controlling light. And we're going to go about it two different ways. I'm going to take a very simple approach this evening to lighting. I see a couple of people chiming in. That's wonderful. Everything I'm going to work with tonight is very straightforward. Most photographers have it, or something that's similar in that regard. Ironically, it appears that Joey and I both decided to choose a flower this evening to work with. And as you guys can see, I have a couple different small little bouquets here. It's that time of year we all have flowers in our house, and they make great subject matter. Um, this past week, I was thinking about photographing some flowers, and I wasn't really sure how I wanted to do it. But then every morning, I would see the flowers on my countertop, and one day the texture just really stood out to me on the flowers. And I'm like, how can I recreate that? So what I elected to do was, typically come down to the studio and see what I could do with that. So I am just going to it's great to see everyone in. So for everyone who's joining us, Joey should be here momentarily. I think he lost power. I'm going to have to tease him a little bit because I'm in Colorado and I got about 8 inches of snow today, and knock on wood, I still have power right now. Joey's in sunny California. I don't know why they're losing power. I should in Colorado, if anyone. So my subject matter tonight is going to be, well, I'm not really sure which one it's going to be quite yet. It'll probably be, well, kind of the pinkish purple or maybe the yellow. Haven't really decided. We're going to look in camera and see how that works. I am roughed in with my set at this point. And what I'll tell everyone is my plan is to go through the lighting to see options and see the potential. There's really no way in a 30-minute, or if Joey doesn't get here, an hour, that I'm going to come up with the exact shot. When I was working on this the other day, I'll be honest, I spent a few hours doing this, rotating. I have my little scissors here that I was using to do a little trimming of some petals in here. So it takes a little bit, but we are roughed in with that. So just to show you guys the different views, obviously me, the one light you can't see and you won't be able to see tonight is right here. You can probably see my hand. There is a small soft box. And in fact, if I was to grab a small mirror, let's see how well this works. See if you guys can see it. Yeah, you guys can see that there's a white light softbox right above me. It's just a small softbox. The only thing I'm going to have it do on my set is fill the shadows just a little bit. Because I'm going to use a fairly hard light source moving across my subject, I have the potential to lose detail in my shadows. So what I want to do, and what this top light is going to be for, is just filling the shadows. And we're going to take a look at just how little that exposure is. So well, I'm going to go with 3 lights. They're all modified. Now, this is a small softbox, but the reality is I have, well, they're light gray ceilings. I could bounce a light off the ceiling. I could take a white card, hold it here, and bounce a light into the white card to do the exact same thing. So you don't have to have a softbox. I just happen to have one up there. Now, switching cameras real quickly. Now, I do have a second light we'll talk about. That's my key light. You'll see how I'm going to modify that a little bit. And then I'm also going to light the background. Sorry for my arm right in front. I will be lighting the background with another small light in there. And that's really all I'm going to be working with tonight for my equipment. So I'm just going to power up the camera. And the only light we see right now when I go in camera, and this is going to appear very dark, you can just barely see a little bit of the flower. And I'm going to go ahead and raise the ISO so you can see it. That's the top light. My hand's covering it right now, but that is my top light. And it's just filling the entire set. Now I'm going to bring my ISO back down to about where I had it, over at 250. So that's just barely doing anything. Now I'm going to go back in the camera, and I'm going to turn on my side light, which I was referring to with my key light. And I'm just going to pop that on. And what you probably noticed on my set, I have this card in here. And it's just a homemade Cucaloris. And really what it is a black card. Let's see, how can I show it? There we go. It's just a black card with holes punched in it. I mean, literally, it's an 8x10 card. I could light the flower. Well, if I go in camera, it's going to appear really bright. So let's just turn it down and start turning the flower down a little bit. I could just do something like this. And that's nice. I like it. It's pretty interesting. And it's actually a good way for me to simply just start rotating the flower to see what I have in camera. My camera right now, it's on a tripod. It's sturdy for a tripod that, oh gosh, I've had for, I don't want to tell you guys, 30 plus years or so. So it's going to be much easier for me to actually move my subject than it is to move the camera. Now with the camera, I might rotate it a little bit. You can barely see it giving a little wiggle. Actually, if I go in camera, you'll see it. It's nice geared. I can rotate a little bit, and I can go up and down here. But for the most part, and maybe I'll just straighten out a little bit, I want to move my subject around, because that's going to be much easier for me just to get my hands in here and do this than move the camera. So let's take a look in camera as I do it. I'm going to probably glance at the big monitor, kind of right over the top of the camera that's on me. Let me just open this up. And, I don't know. I kind of like the purple, pinkish purple flower or petals. I can rotate it. It's going to rip. I think I see Joey just showed up. Hey, Joey, you want to say anything to the nice people?
Sorry for my absence.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I've been scrambling around trying to make things work. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I'm just diving in. We have quite a few people in here from, it looks like, all over New York City, Iowa. I have a feeling we also have UK and a few others joining us tonight. So again, thank you for that. One of the things I didn't mention that Joey is also going to do later on is, we had mentioned that we do have some specialty workshops starting to launch in January. Someone who's joining us tonight, we'll call names out, and we're definitely going to give away one of the, have someone join us on one of the specialty workshops that's coming up, your choice. But we'll do that in a little bit. So at this point, all I'm doing, and let me send this one back to the stream, is I'm just trying to figure out, do I want to go with the yellow flower? I kind of like the idea of the purple one. Hey, Joey, what color flower are you working with tonight?
Purple with the yellow looks like that.
Oh my gosh. The funny part is, we did not discuss this. Who is grabbing what color flower. I'm going to lower my tripod just a little bit because I like that one petal I'm seeing off to the right. Now, lens choice, I do have my 105 macro lens, and I'm not, I am pretty much at macro. I might just push the flower back a little bit. There we go. Somewhere in that ballpark. And again, in 25 minutes or so, since Joey's here, I'm not going to take the whole hour. I'm not going to create the perfect image. Like I mentioned the other day when I was working on this, I spent hours. In fact, I want to show you guys something real quick. My original subject that I was going to work on the other day, which I'm not done yet with, is a dried up sunflower that it's still going to happen. But after about 3 hours and a few very choice words, I decided it was time to switch gears and work on something a little bit different. So, what we have going on with the flower now, it looks nice. It's interesting. I like the shape. But what I want to do is I want to go a little bit further with it. I want to have kind of a dappled look. And that's where, as I mentioned, my homemade Cucaloris, the black card. So my rigging on the set is, let's see well, let me move this other bouquet. I'll just put it back here. Is I have it set up where I have an arm coming in. It's just pivoting in the back right now. I can slide it. And I'm just going to put it right in here, right in front of the light. And I am going to turn the light up a little bit because I know I lost quite a bit of light. So now we're looking in camera. And I'm just going to start turning this up. And as I move this card, and you guys can see, I'll go back to camera. So I'm just moving it in and out, pivoting it. That little movement right here is just going in and out with that. And I can slide it forward or back. And that's one of the things I really like about using, something like a Cucaloris, even a homemade one, is we can get this really unique look on our subject. It just gives that dappled, kind of realistic look in there. So I saw a note that someone mentioned they might not be able to see us right now. Looks like, I'm guessing some people are. So hopefully, Nancy, you will be able to see us in a second. Sometimes there's a little bit of delay. So all I'm doing is just moving it a little bit. There's not going to be a right or wrong answer. I'm just rotating the card some. I kind of like that placement. Now, one of the things I sometimes will get back to is start rotating. Obviously, I'm really focusing in on that one petal, but maybe I want to change that. Now, if I decide that this petal, well, go back here. Whoop. See, this petal right there is a little too bright. I have a couple options. And the option that I need to remind myself to resist doing is the scissors. Inevitably, as soon as I cut a petal, I change it and decide, oh gosh, I really wish I had left that there. So what I sometimes will do, I'll just grab, it could be anything, a skewer, doesn't really matter. And on my homemade Cucaloris, let's see, I guess that view will work. From the back side, I'll kind of see if I can figure out which one of those holes is it. So let's see if I can figure this out. It kind of looks like, is it that one or that one? Of course, trying to do this while talking that's why I don't chew gum and walk at the same time. Somewhere right into that ballpark. It's probably these two. Oh, kind of that one primarily and a little bit the other. So what I'll sometimes do is just grab some gaffer's tape and I'm just going to cover up one of those holes, not both of them. Go back in camera. And as I move it around, it can be minimized, which is kind of nice. I can also move the light a little bit. I'm going to keep moving this. Still not convinced on where I want to be in focus. I might go back to that one petal. So somewhere in that ballpark, I like what's going on there. And I like what's happening with the light. I can hear my dog barking upstairs. It's a sign that UPS has arrived at my house at this moment. So I like what's happening there. What I'm not a fan of right now is the background. It's just, there's nothing happening. When we look at this shot here of this, there I go again, trying to put my arm in front of the camera. I do have one light here, and I do have a small scrim. As I mentioned, I'm going to modify all three lights, or else I'm kind of setting out to at this point. So let's go ahead and flip this light on, if I can reach it. Whoop, I think it was on, it was just powered down. There we go. And we can see that it's just, we go back in camera. I'll turn it off for a second, or I'll just turn it down, turn it way up. And I just want a little bit of light back there, but I'm not 100% sure I want to modify it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back down. And I'm just going to go to the back side just for a minute. You'll see this slide out of the way. Everything in here, and those of you guys who have joined us before know that most of the time when Joey and I build our sets, we try to build everything in a way that it's easy to slide. No matter what it is, things can slide. Just, we're not working with assistants. I used to have assistants in my studio. I don't have that luxury anymore at my house. And my dog's not a huge help, and my wife's upstairs working. So let me just turn this light up a tiny bit more. We can just see it coming in a little bit. There's a lot. I can angle it. Well, I kind of like where it was. Let's see, let's just kind of rotate it, turn it back down. Just a little hint of light back there. Because I just don't want a black hole. I just want something that's sitting back there. And I'm going to turn up my key light just a little bit. You guys are seeing that in camera. So the one other thing I'm thinking about is if I want to fill any of the shadows, and I have a couple, but beyond the overhead light, and I have a couple options. This gets a little difficult with this image just because the cupola, but let's try something. I do have a mirror. It's not doing anything right this second. If I just go with a white card, let's see, am I seeing anything change? Well, I'm probably not going to hit anything with the white card. It's probably just a little too far away. Well, let's take a peek. Nope, nothing with the white card. I wonder if the mirror will be enough. So on my set, this little guy can slide in, and I'm going to take the mirror off. Oh, I can. Just has to be up a little higher. I'm not sure I need it, but if it's up higher, I can definitely get it. So the beauty of this, and this little guy can just pivot up, come over, and slide in, and I can rotate it into the shot if I want to have just a little bit of extra light coming in for that. I don't think I need it on this one, right? Well, it's one of those things. Last comments like, well, maybe I do, maybe I don't. But the beauty is it's so easy to rig right now, just sliding it in and out. If you notice, I'm going to drop this. This arm is almost at the end of how far I could put it out. I like the short ones because they don't get in the way. However, you can just screw on an extension. So if I want to go a little bit longer and move it farther away, I can very easily do that with this. So I am going to put the mirror back in because it is adding just a tiny bit. Hard to see on the presentation tonight, but it is giving just a little bit, like a little too much light in the background. So I just want that little kiss of light back there. And I like the direction that's going for me. So I have a few minutes. Oh, I see Nancy had a comment. Do I ever use focus peaking for this type of work? I do all the time. I am a huge fan of focus peaking. Fortunately, this shot actually works pretty well. I don't know if you can see the focus. Whoops, it just zoomed in. Can you guys see? Oh, you can. I believe, in camera. Oh, you can see the focus point. This subject works well that I can pick a point and focus on it. Some of my other subjects are not so easily focused on. So then I would switch over. In fact, if I focus peaking is always turned on in my camera, it's always set to on. So as soon as I go from autofocus to manual focus, you'll see that. Let's see in camera if you guys can see it. Of course, I have a reddish subject, so when I get in focus, there are little red lines that are appearing that show me what's in focus. It is my friend focus peaking. And in fact, I like what we've done here. Let's try something because I got a few minutes. I'm going to switch flowers.
Hey, Joe.
Yes, Joey.
Dan was asking, in what order did you add your lights when you created the set?
That's a really good question. And I knew that was going to come up because 9 out of 10 times, I think everyone always hears me say that I'll generally work from the background forward because the background's it's such a key element. This is one of those rare occasions where I did start with the key light. I did start with my main light, no cucoloris, no modifier, and I quickly realized right off the bat that I was going to have some dark shadows. So what I was going to do is definitely was going to have to fill the shadows. I had a feeling that a white card would not suffice because A, it'd be coming from the back side and I kind of wanted it everywhere. So the second light I added was the softbox up here. And it's just, as you guys saw, it's almost giving no light. Again, that's how little of light the overhead is doing. It's really just designed to fill some shadows in there. And then I did the backlight. I knew I was going to need a backlight for this shot. Um, it was sitting on the table ready to go, but without knowing how tight I am on the subject and without knowing what part of the background I was going to see, I couldn't even. There's no point in turning the light on. So it was known. The light I was not sure about was the overhead light. That was the one that I had not originally planned on, but it quickly popped up and said, "Oh yeah, that's going to be really important. I'm going to change something dramatically." Joey, how am I doing on time?
Oh, you're fine, Joe.
Okay, because I do want to change something. I'm going to change to a lower angle and try something a little different. And I might even break my comment about ripping petals off, but I'll try not to. Let's see. Barely see a little focus peaking. I can see it. It's probably hard for everyone else too. So this is kind of fun. I like what's happening here. Again, I got my cucoloris. I can just move it in and out. Kind of gives that dappled natural look. I can shift the light. Ooh, don't like that. And I can raise and lower the light. In fact, I'm going to raise the light a little bit and angle it down into the cucoloris still just to change the direction.
Hey,
So
Joe, can you switch cameras?
I can. Probably want that one. So you'll notice that the light has been raised and I'm just angling it down a little bit. So all I'm doing is changing the overall direction, but it's still passing through the cucoloris that's going in and out with that. I kind of like that overall look that it's giving me. So back in camera. Now I do have a little bit of a problem, and that is the stem is definitely a little dark for me. Um, and let's see, where should we focus? There we go. So I'm going to take the mirror off and see if I can just figure out, ooh, I think this will work right about there. This is one of those, I always have to stare at it for a minute and go, okay, now how am I going to get it in there? I have an idea. I think this will just slide on in nicely. It is one of those, if I can't get it where I want it, I might have to put the extent. Ooh, I think I got it. So we're just getting a little bit of a highlight That might give me a tiny bit more coming in on the flower petal or on the stem. So I just lit up that little bit right where my finger is, right in there. It's not a lot, and I just bumped my flowers. But you can see how easy it is to change things around, to give different looks with a little cuculoris. You can put some tape behind it, all very straightforward. So the last thing is just kind of a once over on the set again, because I mentioned I was going to start with nothing elaborate. The overhead light could just be bouncing off the ceiling very easily. This is just a single LED. It is set up in a way that I can, raise and lower it. I can angle it here. It is set with a drop pin, so it's not going to go anywhere. Everything is just rigged in a way that it's very easy to move, and an 8x10 piece of card. Now, as many times as I've tried to take a sharp object and poke holes in these, I've always found a drill is the way to go. I just take a drill and have fun with that. And then just a single LED. I thought I was going to use diffusion. I ended up not using diffusion. And then just a mirror. And that's pretty much my set this evening. Any questions before I hand it back over to Joey? Joey? So I think that is all I have, just focusing on a single flower. But again, what I wanted to do was just create this nice, natural overall look. So it didn't have an overly studio look, but again, I got the inspiration because it had been sitting on my counter for a few days. And every time I walked past it, I'd look at it. And one morning, the light hit it, and I saw texture in the petals that I hadn't noticed any other day. And for me, that just screamed, we've got to figure out a way to shoot it. And that's what happened.
Hey,
So,
Joe.
Joey, I am going to pass it to you.
John was asking about the power of the LED, the fill.
Oh, none of these are very powerful LEDs that I own. Two of them on the set are Nanlite Forza 60s. Their lowest power model they pretty much make. And the one on top is a Filex light or Felix or Filex light, but it's powered way down. I'm not using much power at all with any of my lights. If I was to turn up, let's see, right now, this light here is only at 10%. You can see it can go much higher. Unfortunately, I can't reach the one on the ceiling, but I'm going to guess it's probably at 50% because it is filling a softbox. And the one on the background is at a whopping 4% right now. And I'm actually at ISO 250, f16, and a 40th of a second. So I probably should have gone down to ISO 200 and raised my shutter speed, but it's just fine where it is. But the new LEDs, and again, these are some of the lower power ones you can purchase, did more than anything I need. I'm such low power on everything. It's actually surprising.
It is. I'll second that. It's if you come from the film world, it's shocking how little light or how much less light you need in digital photography because of the sensitivity of the sensors. It used to be you needed just tons of light, and now I did a picture like a month ago with flashlights, and it wasn't like I was shooting at a quarter of a second. I was up around 125th, 250 at f8 with little tiny pen lights. So the sensors are amazingly sensitive. Yes. I
Yeah,
did want to.
it's
I did
surprising.
want to ask the. Here's our list of everybody that signed up for tonight. So what I'm going to do is very unscientific, but very random. I'm just going to take my pen and just point at a name. It looks like, and if you're here, just drop your name into the. Just say here. Otherwise, we'll stop in the middle and we'll call somebody else. But my pen landed on Grant Nakamura. Grant, if you're here, drop your name in the chat. If not, in a few minutes, we'll drop the pen again and we'll see who comes up. Sound good?
I was just going to follow up, Don, with your comment. Um, I am a strobe person primarily. I love working with strobes. My entire studio, oh, Grant is here. My entire
Nice.
studio career was based on strobes. I started out, and actually, I have a cabinet full of Profoto strobes in there. And a lot of you know, I actually used to work for Profoto also. So I love strobes, and there were times when I used to shoot with 8x10 film cameras, so 8x10 transparency, then down to 4x5, and there are days we were working with 20,000 watts of light, 20,000 watts of light, and it just makes me laugh that I'm using such little power right now. So Grant, congratulations. It'll be great to have you join us in a specialty workshop.
Yes. Thank you, Joe. And again, my apologies on this end. Had a little trouble with power. I can't imagine why, but uh, it's funny. I had special circuits and everything put in for this studio, but it didn't seem to do me any good. Anyway, moving right along. So interestingly, and Joe and I do this a lot. We don't really discuss. I mean, we kind of do ahead of time. We talk a little bit about what we're planning on doing for one of these, but we don't talk specifically about a subject. Now, I will confess, and Joe hasn't even heard this. When I joined him about an hour ago, I told him, I said, "Yeah, it's been a hectic setup." And I didn't tell him why. And I'll tell you exactly the reason why. So I had this idea you guys have probably seen these. They're these tops. You see them advertised all over the place that spin on these bases. And I looked at it and I was like, this would be great because this is like a mirrored surface. So I can deal with that reflection. And then I can deal with the reflection all around the metal of this top. And I can do all kinds of things. And it'll really show how, the angle of the light really impacts how metal, it reflects off of metal and all of that. So I tell you this story because sometimes I think all of us can be discouraged because we'll try something and it doesn't work. So I started with this at 10:30 this morning, and by 2:30 I still didn't have a shot. I went at it for 4 hours and I still wasn't happy. And at some point I was like, well, I have to put something together, otherwise I'm not going to have anything for this session. And so I abandoned this in favor of doing what I've got here. Now, here's what's interesting. I bought a piece of glass kind of for the same purpose, but now I'm using it for something else. So there's the backstory on why it turns out I'm actually using a flower that's kind of like Joe's. I tried to be super ambitious and kind of like went over the line. So um, failure started the day, and let's see if we can have success to finish it off. So I'm going to do this. And let me take you on a little bit of a tour about what I've got going today. Now, I don't have the lights on yet, but in camera, you saw a little bit earlier. Obviously, there's no lights on it yet. It's just the studio lights that you're seeing there. Here's kind of the side view. It's coming from over here. You can kind of see what I've got going. I've got my little piece of glass I just told you about. I've got a reflector down here. I've got another reflector that's way up here. I think it's kind of out of camera. You can't even see it. It's so high. And then I've got another white reflector you can see there in the back. I've got 3 lights going, one way back here and the 2 that are out front. And so no light is actually striking the subject directly. Everything is bouncing off of something else. What Joe did and what I'm going to do are similar, but we're coming at it from a very different perspective, if that makes sense. So I didn't show you the 4th camera. So there's that. So there's my piece of glass, and I'll move this back a little bit so you can kind of get a little bit better view of the set. Maybe that. So you can see where the lens is relative to the subject. I chose kind of a high angle because as I was going along, I was originally going to come at it from this angle, but like the higher I got, the better the shot looked to me. So one of the questions earlier was about which light goes first. I chose this time, and I do this a lot. I confess that all of us have a certain style, or if you use a pejorative term, it's a crutch. You do things in a certain way. I love lighting flowers from behind. I like to see the glow of the flower. I like to see the texture of the petals. And so, to answer the question about what light do you do first, that was where I started. And that's this reflector right here, which is being struck, sorry, by that light there. So let me turn that light on. One thing I do is I can't reach any of them to show you, but I label my lights. There's, like, you guys can probably see from that angle, I've left it in the back so I can't see it from here, so it's kind of useless. But I put like an A, B, and C, so I know when I'm controlling the light from over here, which one it is I'm controlling. Now this is glary, I can see that. But let me take you in camera, and you can see that that's the glow that I get. If I turn the light off again, you can see that's what that light is doing. And if I move this reflector that's underneath it around, you can see I can change the characteristics of that glow, where it's going. Is it further forward? Is it further back? Is it going between the petals? Am I making it even? So I can start there. Now, the thing that you can't see, and I'm going to lower this down a little bit so that you hopefully can. Look at that. It's going to work, I think, if I can get it in focus. Give me 1 second. May not focus for me, but I'll give it a shot. There it will. So what's happening is I've got this thing right here. And what it is, it's an iris. And so if I go back in camera, I'm moving this iris open and closed, which once I had the angle that I wanted, the next part was how much of it do I want to light? So that's almost all the way closed. That's just a little bit open. That's more open. And I could light all the petals if I wanted. But I kind of like the fall off a little bit. So I'm going to go with that for now. Maybe that's a little too much. And the way that this works is there's this little thing right here. And by sliding it back and forth, I'm opening and closing the iris, which looks like that. But it kind of gives you this glowy quality. And now that I've closed it, I'm going to play with my reflector a little bit. And you might say, well, why are you using a reflector? Like, why not just put a light there? The problem is if you look at the size of these lights, they're big. And it would be very hard to get the whole light shoved underneath there. And once I've done that, the other part is I have no way to raise and lower the light because I'd have it all jammed in there and there's no way to really control it. This way, by just simply, I've got this reflector sitting on a base, I can just twist it like that, which, whoops. Gives me very subtle control over the light. Any questions so far? Are we good? Good? Good. Okay. So moving on to the next light. So I've got just the glow of the flower and that's it. And so that, for me, going back to, which light do you go with first? I go with the one that I think is going to require the most intensity. So that light is turned up as bright as it can possibly be. I'm using a thing called a beam intensifier. That's that big thing on the end of the light. It's like a big hunk of glass. And what it does is it concentrates the light into one spot. And so all of it is going into this this right here, you can see how much light, I mean, it's just cooking that thing. But because it's going up through that iris, up through glass, and then up through the flower, it's taking all the juice I can give it. And so that's where I'm going to start. So if I go back in camera, that's my base exposure. So I could, I could make it darker, but I feel like that's about the place I want to be, somewhere in there.
So, Joey,
Yeah.
Bob had a question about what's the flower sitting on, what's underneath it, because you're shining light through, I know it's on a piece of glass, but you're shining light from the bottom up, but the glass has to be resting on something also.
Yeah.
So how is that whole thing rigged to allow you to shine light through it?
So I'm reluctant to even talk about this because I'm ashamed of the amount of money that I've spent on being able to rig stuff like this. But so let me tell you the cheap way to do this. If you go to like Bed Bath and Beyond and you buy a Lazy Susan and you cut a hole in the middle of it, and then you take 3 sticks and attach them to the, like 3 dowels or something like that, and attach them to the Lazy Susan, you'd essentially have the same thing I'm about to show you here. So what this is there's 3 steel posts here. They're all anchored to this base. These are all 1/4 holes in here, and so it's anchored to the base. And then this whole platform rotates. So in camera, I'm able to, if I don't like the way that the flower looks, without the light changing or anything else changing, which is why I have this, is I can say, well, I like that view of it, or I want equal amounts of black in the background, or maybe I don't want any black. I can't see because I'm doing picture in picture, but maybe I want the stamens or whatever they're called facing away from me. It enables me to rotate the entire platform as a unit without changing anything else. So I can independently move the subject. I'm ashamed at how much money I've spent. So that's why I gave you the just as good, much less money solution. I hope that's helpful.
Wonderful.
Good. Okay, so light number 1 we've done. Let's move on to light number 2, which to me is probably the one that is the most important one. And I'll go to this camera here. And so that's going to be my main light, which looks like that. Now, that light is, let's see, it's that one over there. And again, what's really cool is this light is it's going between this card and that card up into what is essentially a mirror, which you unfortunately can't see. It's way high up here, but it's essentially about that big, and it's a mirror. Sorry, I should do it this way. It's this big and it's like a mirror, and it's just held up there. The light's bouncing into the mirror. And then very much like Joe, you can see this is like a homemade cucaloris again. And what it is, again, when we go in camera, as I move it, I mean, I'm just barely rocking it back and forth. And I just happen to find a hole that I liked, that it holds the light off most of the rest of the flower and just lets a little bit of light. You can see down in the lower right-hand corner, there's some hitting that petal, which I kind of like. It's like another little bit of interest. But, if you like it in the middle or off to the side, make it look as natural as possible. So those are my 2 lights. And again, if I had to rig this in such a way where I wasn't doing it with reflectors, to get the same quality of light, what I'd have to do is have the light way up in the sky to get that very small source and get the very defined shadow. This way, I'm carrying the light up into this mirror and then down through the holes, and I get this nice, really nice quality of light. And what's interesting, bring this up so that you can see, bring the exposure down a bit. It looks really cool even from up here. It's like a really nice quality of light. I'll turn that other light off. You can see what it does. So here's the light coming from underneath. The rest of the light is the studio light. So there's the light from underneath. There's the light from over the top. And it's, it's like even like that, it's kind of a cool shot. But I'm more fond of this. So finally, let me move this so it can show you something that's useful. Give me 1 second to read. Oh, you can see. There we go. So there's another reflector back there, that white one. And so this light way back here, it's kind of hidden back here where my finger is. You can barely see it. All this is going to do is, again, my camera has slept on me. Lazy. It's lazy. All this light is going to do is add a little value around the flower, like so. Now I can control that. I can knock it down if I think it's too much, like there's nothing. But by bringing it up to there, look what it does to that lower right-hand petal. All of a sudden, that petal, which didn't seem to show anything at all, now all of a sudden has all kinds of texture. So it's really, at least from my perspective, it's a balancing act of finding 3 different light intensities from 3 completely different directions to show, what is, from my perspective, a really ordinary kind of flower. It's really the light that is doing all of the heavy lifting. So I don't think that there's anything else that the one thing I would add to this is that one of the great things about using, you saw Joe use mirrors. I'm using what is essentially a mirror. I'm using essentially a white card. This here is white. You can't see it. It's so bright, but it's pure white, like a white card. The great thing about using reflectors is that you can change them, in the sense, like, if you don't like the quality of light you're getting, you can swap them out without moving anything else to change the quality of light. Let me show you what I mean. I have this.
Joey, as you come back, what are your camera settings?
Camera settings are a 60th at f7.1 at ISO 400. So here's the one that's almost like a mirror. You can see if I reflect, I'm reflecting there I am right there. You can see it's not quite a mirror. And then this one's quite a bit duller. It's still silver, but it's not like that. And then this one is even duller. And the point is that you can swap things out. So for example, let me go back in camera. If I take the mirrored one and swap it for this white one, I'm just going to set it in front, I get obviously much more intensity. And I'll turn that down and we'll see if I can't. But you can see it's a different kind of light. It's the same size, but it's not as even across the glow. It's very much a hot spot. Whereas if I go back, that's white. If I go to something that's more like a very soft silver, so like a grade up from where we were, that's this. So it's more light intensity, and it's a bit more spotty. The point being is that you can change the quality of light without moving the lighting. All I'm really doing is swapping out surfaces so that you end up with a different quality of light. Otherwise, if I wanted to change the quality of light and I used an actual light down here, what would I have to do to make it, softer? I don't have enough room. I can't like add a softbox to it or something like that. The great thing about using indirect light is you have lots and lots of control. I could do the same thing on that one. Instead of using the white reflector that's there, that one there, I could swap that with a little bit more tooth to it, if you will. And then what we would end up with is when we're looking at this, the edges, that part would be more defined. And so without, like I say, without moving anything around, you can completely change how you're lighting something. How'd I do, Joe?
Doing great. I'm looking to see if there's any questions, and I think we've covered pretty much all of them. I think it was Dave who made a comment about shooting pool, and always, and few of you guys have heard us say this, angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. It's identical to shooting pool
Yeah.
when you're using cards and mirrors, indirect light. And lighting with, indirectly is a great way to go. But you can also, Joey's using three lights right now. I could almost guess Joey could do this with less lights by having one main light and then one mirror or something very shiny and redirecting it and then picking up those reflections or those lights.
Yeah, it is possible to do it. And I have done it. Particularly, like, one of the great things is, like, if you take a bigger reflector that's like this size, and then you put a different reflector in front of it. And then what you end up being able to do is catch light on the outside and use the middle of it. So, for example, like, if you put both of these over the top of a flower, one could light the center, the rest could light what's around it. It doesn't give you, doing it that way, doesn't give you as much control, because, as you can clearly see, if you want to move one, in all likelihood, the other one's going to move with it. And so it kind of creates its own set of problems. I prefer to separate them as much as I can. And I would add, even on the base, sometimes it's tempting. Let's see if you can, probably from here, you'll notice that light sits on its own platform. So does that one. The thing that holds this reflector back here, right there, is on its own platform. And the reason is it's tempting sometimes to, like, say, oh, I can put a light and the reflector kind of on the same stand or platform. And what ends up happening is you want to move one and then the other one moves with it. It's much more, Joe and I talk about this all the time. And for those of you who've been kind enough to join us before, we talk all the time about mental friction, and which is why things get rigged the way they get rigged. Because instead of worrying about, like, I can't move that light because something's attached to it, for me, it would be very easy right now to reach over there, move that light a little, move that light a little, and not worry about affecting anything else. Particularly when you're working at this scale, something this small, that the smallest little movement makes a world of difference. And so separating everything, making it so that you can, like I was showing you here, being able to adjust something just by twisting it or sliding it around, it makes it much easier to make those, really fine adjustments. We good, Joe?
We're doing great. That's a lot of information. Anyone have any questions? I know we've had some questions come in. I've been able to answer some of them as we've gone. Joey, can you do one favor? Can you
Yeah.
move the glass and the flower for a second off the base, just so we can see the whole breadboard, the round breadboard? Yeah. See, there was a couple of questions about that, and that's just a hole in there where light's coming up. And that was Joey's comment that you could get a lazy Susan and just cut the center out of it.
Yeah. This thing comes with, like, you can see, there's a hole in it, but you can also drop this piece in and make it an entire platform, and then the entire thing rotates. And so sometimes I'll use it with something sitting on it, but more often than not, I use it as a platform to be able to put light through it and be able to, it. The other thing it does is that all the outside parts of it shield the whatever I'm shooting from the light, if that makes sense. Meaning, if you just set this out of the middle of something, like, let's say this was a pane of glass, all the light that you're coming from underneath with might spill and hit areas you don't want it to hit. So by having a hole in the middle and then my iris that I was telling you about that's underneath, I can take this hole and turn it into a hole about that big, and I don't have to worry about any stray light out here. So there's a method to the madness, but it's really nice to be able to rotate things, and that's why I say you can. I find tons of stuff at Home Depot, Bed Bath and Beyond, Michaels, places like that. They're very handy to find. I did a shot one time where I wanted to use. I was shooting water droplets on glass, and I wanted to be able to move an LED panel underneath the water droplets, but I wanted to be able to slide it, and I there couldn't be any like jiggling or anything like that. So I went to Bed Bath and Beyond, and I found a drawer slider, like the kind of thing you'd put under a cabinet and like put pot lids in or something, and you could pull them out and there's all your pot lids. And so I bought one of those, mounted it to something, and then put the LED panel in it, and it allowed me to just slide it back and forth for a very long exposure, so I could get those blurry streaks underneath that I wanted. But those kinds of places, you don't think about them as like a supply house for photography, but as it turns out, they often are.
So John had a question. Would you use the round breadboard to photograph oil and water?
Yes, I definitely would. In fact, I definitely have. It's a great. I use these. They're like petri dishes, and I'll put the petri dish on the right over that hole, and then now I have the ability to bring light up through the petri dish, through the oil and the water, without it spilling all over the place. Not the water, but the light spilling all over the place. So this comes in handy for a lot of different things. But like I said, it's definitely something that could be made without a whole lot of trouble.
Joey, you made a comment about, all those stores, Lowe's, Michael's, you name it. And I think it's really important that the amount of things that we don't purchase at camera stores is pretty amazing. There are
Yeah.
definitely times to do that. And we pick and choose very carefully where we're spending money. And it has a lot to do with mental friction. As you notice, we both use breadboards. They slide easily the way we have them rigged. We have different Matthews arms. Those are things that we have invested in a fair amount of money because they make our lives easier so we can focus on our, no pun intended, on our shots without getting frustrated. When it comes to all these other creative things, there's such a world out there in all these other stores for props, for just different ways of controlling things that have nothing to do with photography stores. So it is an investment. We make the investment in our gear where it really does work for us without going overboard. At least we try
Yeah.
not to go overboard
Yeah,
because
I always
you don't
say
have to.
I can't make a lens, but I can make a lazy Susan out of a few parts. So, I'm fortunate I do this for a living, so I've got a reason to spend the money. But if like I say, it's very difficult to make your own camera or make your own lens. But if you can make your own lazy Susan and be able to buy, the camera you want or the lens you want or whatever, yeah, that's a good way to divvy up the dough, as they say.
Or make your own Cucaloris of
Yes,
different sizes.
make your own cucaloris. That's exactly right. Well,
So
I
I
think
just want to once
we're
again
about
say
at the time mark, Joe. I want to say again, thank you for your patience with me earlier, but I'm glad it all worked out in the end. And as we always say, we know you've got other ways to spend your time, so we're grateful that you guys hang out with us, and hopefully it's valuable. And we may do one more before the end of the year, but so look for an email from us. If we do it, I'll just say it now. We're planning on doing something. What did you call it, Joe? What's it called? A year in review?
a little bit of a year in review.
Yeah, we've done this kind of thing before, and I'll just give you an idea what it is. Oftentimes, people will ask us, "How did you do that picture?" And so, what we're planning on doing is putting images up on the screen and letting you pick them and say, and then we'll go through them and explain how we did them. It'll be completely up to you. Hey, how'd you do number 46? And we'll just talk through it. And it's a good way, because everybody has a different interest. Some are interested in portraiture, some are interested in macro, some are interested in something else. It's a good way for us to kind of just help you through maybe some of your creative ideas and give you some ideas from existing images that we have.
Yeah, and one last little note for those who have joined us in the past, I want to point out something very important. I cannot eat or drink my set tonight. It's a very rare occasion that I cannot consume my subject matter, but these flowers are not edible. So
Yeah.
it's a rare occasion for me. Uh, with that, everyone have a wonderful, wonderful evening, wonderful weekend. If we don't see you before the rest of the holidays, have a wonderful holidays, and hopefully we'll see you soon, though. So
Yeah.
good night.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.